Lori here. I'm back. I'm back today to do the second part of my January reading wrap-up. In the month of January, I did wind up finishing reading 17 books. I literally just finished one, which is why I'm making this video. I had a pretty good reading month overall. I am going to give you guys some stats just in the second half. I'm not going to go over the books that I did in my first part. You guys can find that on my channel. But in the month of January, I did read... just breaking down like genre, like who is supposed to read these books. I mean, I read everything, but if you're curious, I read 10 YA books, 4 adult books, 1 nonfiction book, and 2 middle grade books. Those are the genre specifications, and overall I read 17 things. And then I listened to 4 audiobooks. 6 ebooks I read physically on my Kindle, whether that be e-arcs or just regular books. I read 6 physical books, and I got 1 book from my public library. Some stats for y'all. I listened to 5 e-arcs that came from NetGalley. I read 3 sequels or books that are like in series, so that would be Aurora's End, Sea Witch Rising, and the Unmap Chronicles, book 3. I read 3 contemporary books, 1 adult fantasy, 5 YA fantasy, which is always my highest number normally. I read 1 mystery book or thriller, 1 historical fiction, 3 Regency romances, 1 middle grade, and 3 graphic novels, but like 1 trade paperback. So it was like 3 issues, but 1 graphic novel. So yeah, that's my stats. I'm definitely happy that I did wind up finishing some of my goals. So right off the bat, I was able to finish an adult fantasy. I was able to read a sequel this month. Actually, I read a couple of sequels, which was more than I was expecting. And I did finish a nonfiction book. I did DNF one book because I didn't really love the nonfiction book that I chose, but I did like the one that I wound up picking up later. So let's get into the books that I read in the second half of the month. The first book that I read in the second half of the month was Love from Scratch by Caitlin Hill. This is a contemporary book that comes out, I think, in April. Here is a pretty photo, and I really like this one. To pick this book up. It was very, very fun. It was super cute. It was pitched sort of as like Hate to Love set at a baking competition, and I like the baking competition. I think that the 2 characters had a really interesting dynamic. I would not say this was Hate to Love the way that I like it to be done, but I will admit it was a fun read, really engaging. The characters had to like get to know each other, so I didn't feel like right off the bat it was hate to love. But the reason I think it was pitched that way is you have these 2 characters, and they're both competing for a possibility to get an internship at this company, and they're both competing for the same exact job. After they're sort of pitched together, like they sort of do like a spot on a TV show for this network, and people just wind up shipping them together. So they kind of get like this behind the scenes deal, and they're kind of like working, sort of doing like a YouTube series for them. So they kind of get pitched together, and that sort of builds up that they're dating, and they're both competing for this job. I really did like all the dynamics of the baking elements was super fun. It's not just baking as the cover lets you think. It's like baking in a lot of different aspects. I really like the main character. The one thing that would have made this book a little bit better for me was if it was dual point of view, but that's just a personal preference. I think this would definitely be like an early like summer read, like April or May, because it's set in the summer, and it was like a nice balance between like YA and new adult, because it's the summer before college. And I really enjoyed it. I really like both characters. It was a fun read. They also had a lot of like interesting conversations about the entertainment industry and female roles in the entertainment industry. I like that. The end was really fun and engaging. And I really did like the romance. It wasn't the way that I like Hate to Love to be done, but I did enjoy it. I looked at it more as like Friends to More. But it was fun. It was engaging. I gave it like 3.75 stars, but probably I think I rounded up to 4 on Goodreads. Really enjoyable, and I would definitely check out more by Caitlin Hill in the future. The book I picked up was definitely a surprise, but again, earlier in the month I was watching like a lot of like YouTube videos trying to catch up because I had gone to Disney, and Riley Marie had done a reading vlog where she read The Curious Beginning by Diana Raybourne as a reread, which I've read like a decade ago. Not like a decade. I read like 6, 7 years ago. And I liked it, but I didn't really remember it. And I knew I probably wanted to read it and like move on to the series because I've really been enjoying historical romances. So I picked up the first one, and I loved my reread. Delight. So you basically follow this character named Veronica Speedwell, and her aunt winds up passing away. And once her aunt passes away, she's sort of thrust into this world, not really knowing what to expect. She's also like a woman of her own means. She's a butterfly hunter, so she catches butterflies and like is very, very involved. But when she gets caught up in this murder mystery, she winds up teaming up with this grumpy man, and they wind up going on an adventure to figure out who killed this man, and it's sort of like a mystery, and her past is revealed along the way. I love my re-listen. Like, I loved it. I flew through it. It was laugh out loud funny. It reminded me of reading like a historical romance, but I really loved the mystery, and I loved it. There's a lot of side characters. There's some fun animals involved, which if you know me, if you give me a dog and some cute pets, I'm here for it. And I just love Veronica Speedwell. She's such like a fun character, like definitely a favorite of mine, and I'm so happy. I'm actually reading the second book right now, and I'm loving that book as well. She's just so fun to read from her point of view. I love the male lead. I kind of remembered the end, but I was very surprised to see where the end turned up. I'm really liking my second book that I'm reading as well. But yeah, I was so happy that I picked this up, and it's entirely because of Riley Marie that I picked it up, because I have been planning to reread it for some time, but just motivated me, and I'm really excited to see where the series goes. My library has most of them, so I'm going to pick them up through the audiobook, through an audiobook. But I really like this, and so happy that I was able to reread it this month, because it's been quite a bit. So the next thing that I picked up was the Avatar comics, and I've been reading them sort of in order. So I picked up Smoke and Shadow, and I was able to read all 3 volumes pretty much in a day. So that's what we're going to chat about next. Here's a photo. I will be totally honest. I'm reading this a little bit slower because I know that once I'm done with these, I have no excuse to not start Legend of Korra. And I just really, really love these characters quite a bit. Like, they're some of my favorite characters, and I just don't want to let go of Aang and the gang quite yet. But this one was definitely, they sort of had gone back. This series was a little bit weirder to me because like every book focused on different characters, and they weren't really all together until like the very, very end of the last volume. But there was a mysterious element. They all sort of were forced to work together, but they had different fronts, all sort of solving the same exact problem. This is also coming off of The Search, which answers a big Avatar question that they didn't tell you in the series, so I don't want to spoil that for you if you haven't read. The question is, what happened to Zuko Mom? You do find that out, so that's the after effects of that comic is also in this comic. But I really liked it, and I will get around to reading the next series maybe soon. Hopefully in February. I would like to do that, but we will see how successful I am. But overall, I would probably give this like 3.75 stars. I think I definitely liked the last volume the most, but it was a really enjoyable read. And definitely if you were a fan of Avatar The Last Airbender and have not read the comics, I would definitely recommend it. The art style is really, really nice as well. Definitely a favorite for me. So that is what I read next. And the next book I picked up was some physical books, so I have to go get those. So I was really excited for this one. If you know anything about me, you know I am a theater geek. I teach theater to my students. And when I heard the pitch for this book, I was like, oh my God, I need that book in my life immediately. So I picked up When You Get a Chance by Emma Lord. I devoured this book. I read it in like 24 hours. I could not put this book down. This is the version of Hate to More that I love. It also had a really interesting self-discovery element to it. Also focused a lot on found family, which I love. But you basically follow this girl named Millie, and she has a dream of being a Broadway star. Like a very, very big dream of being a Broadway star. It sort of reminded me a little bit of the elements of I'm Dreaming of a Wyatt Christmas, which had a very similar like that plot line was very, very similar, like her wanting to be a movie, like a Broadway star, and, figuring out that part of it. But she feels a little bit isolated from her dad and her aunt, and she decides, with the help of her trusty best friend, who, again, is something that I love when a girl has a guy best friend and there's no romantic relationship between them, because that's how I was in high school. She is going to use her dad's live journal to figure out who her mom is. And this book was delightful. There's also a job element where she works with her rival at a competitive, like an agency. She works with her rival, and they get closer as that happens, but she's trying to uncover who her mom is, and she has 3 potential suspects, and she sort of kind of ingratiate her in their lives. I love this book. Devoured it. I loved the male lead in this book so much because he's a stage manager, and that's what I do in my real life, and I just loved his personality so much. I love their relationships. I loved Millie. I love this book. If you're a theater nerd, if you like anything about the arts, this is definitely a book to pick up. It was the perfect hate to more romance for me because they had a history, and the history made sense why they didn't like each other, and I like that. It sort of reminded me a little bit of reading Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Rachel Lynn Solomon, because the history was there, it was embedded, and it made sense. So the hate made sense for me in this book, and I really, really enjoyed it. But it was a lot more. It was about self-discovery and trying to find your place in the world, and I loved how this book turned out. I didn't expect how the story really wrapped up. It was a really, really fun read. I gave it 5 stars. Definitely my favorite contemporary of the month by far, and I'm so happy that Emma Lord's junior novel was amazing. I love Tweet Cute. I really do need to reread When You Have a Match, because I read it like 2 years ago at this point. I think it needs a reread. But I love this. So happy for it. So happy I got it, and so happy I tabbed it, because this book has really, really fun quotes. So definitely really enjoyable. If you've not picked this one up, definitely would recommend it. If you like theater at all like me, it's a delight. I changed out my adult fiction book, an adult fantasy book I wanted to start the year off with, because I was watching so many videos, year of review and year wrap-ups, where people were talking about Jade City, and I just had to pick it up. So I did, and I was pleasantly surprised with how much I loved it, and I just really liked it. But if you haven't heard anything about it, here's a photo, and then we'll chat. I would definitely classify this as like an urban fantasy story, and it reminded me a lot of the Mortal Instruments, and I think that's why I liked it, because I really do love the Mortal Instruments series. It's probably one of my favorite YA series of all time. But you basically follow these 2 clans as they're competing to be on top of the world in this jade war. What jade is it is a substance, and when you use jade, you get more like you could run faster. It's not really magic, but you could fight better, you could move faster. And there's 2 competing clans, and you follow like 3 to 4 point of views in this Jade War. And Jade City, you follow 3 to 4 characters. I really love 2 of them, like a lot. And it is an LGBTQ plus boy who is sort of like a ward of this family, the youngest sister of this family who has basically given up her jade, and the soon-to-be leader of this clan and his younger brother. And you sort of follow them through this Cold War, and it was very compelling. I really did like the characters. I sometimes struggle in battle sequences in like adult fantasy books. That's why I rarely ever read them, to be very, very honest. But this book had a nice dichotomy and a nice balance, but it was very character focused, and I found that I really grew to like all of the characters. There were definitely some I had that were like my favorites, but I liked it. And they had some very interesting conversations about character. I mean, not character, but like power and political intrigue. And there was a lot of like, it felt sort of like I was reading just the way the story was sort of crafted. It's reminded me of reading like sort of like Game of Thrones, like how Game of Thrones had different people in different positions, like the Hand, so there was elements of that I really enjoyed. But at the end of the day, it's like a story about family and how that is the most important thing. And I really did like that. I definitely do want to read Jade War. I don't know what, I don't think I'm gonna get around to it next month because I'm gonna focus on a little bit more romance. But it was very good, and I definitely do want to read the sequel soon. But I was able to read one adult fantasy book in a month, and that's a big accomplishment for me because I tend to struggle with that genre a lot. But I really did like it, and I'm really excited to read book two, which doesn't always happen when I'm done with a first book in a fantasy series. I can like go a couple of months without reading it. I don't think that's gonna happen this time, so I'm intrigued, and I really did like it and wound up giving it probably 5 stars. I really did like this one. I just have to read the next one at a quicker pace than I normally would because I will forget everything, and it was a very interesting world that I really liked, and the characters were great as well. So if you, like me, are a little bit of a new to adult fantasy and you have struggled a bit, and maybe check out this one. This was a month of like picking up 4 different audiobooks and then putting them all down. So I finally just went back to a tried and true favorite, and I picked up Regency Romance. I read the second book in this series. Again, they're a companion series, so you don't really need to read them in order. I think this series would have made sense if I did read it in order, but I picked up Just Like Heaven, which is book 1 in the Smythe Smiths Quartet by Julia Quinn. I did really like book 2. I don't know if book 1's like my favorite, but they're both really, really fun. So I picked up the first book in the series, and here's a photo. Book 2, you follow, there was basically a duel, and the person that got shot in that duel had to basically run away. So this is his sister, and she gets the first book and he gets the second book. You actually see him at the very, very end of the story. But this is a brother's best friend's romance, and I just liked it. I just thought it was funny. It was enjoyable. You basically follow the Smythe Smiths, and if you read the Bridgerton series, like they are in that series, and they have all their girls. They like have this musical, this concert every single year, and they're like horrible. They're absolutely horrible. But you have Honor. I can never say her name. But you have the main girl, and she is basically in like her third season, and she's just not getting any hits. What she doesn't know is that her brother, who ran away because he had this incident, he has been telling his best friend to make sure his little sister doesn't matter anyone that's like not appropriate. But little does the brother know, the best friend really does like the girl, and they have a funny relationship about this whole book. It was really, really funny. I liked it, and then we got to see the main character coming back in book 2, and I really, really like that as well. I have to read book 3 as well. I've heard very, very good things about that one as well. I just haven't. My Hoopla loans like expired by the time I got around to requesting it, but I can get some new books tomorrow, so I might pick that one up as well. I liked it. I always like Julia Quinn's writing style, to be honest. It's like such a fun read for me. And it was really, really fun. So I'm really, really happy that I was able to pick it up. And hopefully I'll be able to complete this series this year at some point. What I wrapped up this month was a middle grade series, and that is the Unmap Chronicles. And this is book 3, Zeb Bolt and the Ember Scroll. This one came out in July. I have read all of these books in about pretty much one every single year since they've come out, and I have really liked all of them, so that is no surprise that I gave this one 5 stars, and here is a photo. By this series sort of as I classified like the Unbroken series, the All the Broken Star series by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. Every book is sort of its own self-contained story, but when you put all the books together, they do tell like a complete story. And I really did like this one. You do see like Casper and the twins in this book. Well, one of the twins anyway, that you have seen in the main characters in previous books. And it does stretch across like multiple years. So Casper talk happened like 100 years ago, or maybe like 90 years ago. And then every character since then is like a different time period. But they are all connected to climate change, and they all do deal with that, which is very, very similar to when I read Nature of Witches. But this is about basically the final adventure to sort of get rid of this witch. And you have this young boy who's a runaway, and he kind of gets sucked into the Unmap Chronicles, and he has to work with a young girl who's blind, which I did not know, and that representation was so cool, and her little iguana to sort of save the day. And I just love the representation of Zeb. I thought he was great. Could definitely tell he has some anxiety, and maybe some like depression as well, but I just really did like it. I thought it was a very, very fun, heartwarming story. It does definitely talk about climate change and elements like that for kids to understand. There was a magical element. It was just really, really fun, and I was happy to see the other characters again that we've seen in previous books, and thought that it really did wrap up the whole series so nicely, and so happy that I got around to reading it. I don't know if this author has anything new coming out this year, but she does have a much older series that I might try to get my hands on. Um, and I might have to try to go to like Book Depository and see if they have them, because I don't know if they're published here yet. But I really did like this book and was so happy that I was able to complete the series in January. The next book that I picked up was one that I've had on my TBR for a while, and then I saw Merrily Kristen chat about it, and I knew that I had to pick it up, so that is why I added it to this TBR. I don't think it was planned, but again, my January TBR sort of changed when I was watching those videos because it motivated me to pick up some new books. That always happens when I catch up on booktube because it changes my TBR a little bit. But I picked up These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. Here is the photo. So this is a fae-themed novel, and you follow a character named Bree, and she does not want anything to do with the fairies. Her mom ran away with the fairy, and ever since then, she and her sister have been kind of living they've been living paycheck to paycheck. They've been living with their aunt, but when they can't pay anymore and her sister is sold to the Fairy King, Bree has to go on adventures to sort of save the day. But when she gets to Fairy, she starts to realize the things that she knew aren't what they appeared to be, and she has to sort of work to save her sister, but also getting intertwined with two different fairy courts. And she starts to realize that maybe fairies aren't all bad, and maybe the people she thought that she could trust, she can't really trust at all. I really love this book. It was quite a quick read, to be very, very honest. If I had been sleeping well, I probably would have finished this a lot sooner, but it took me like a whole week because I was so tired after work. But I loved it. It's been so long since I read a fairy book that I really loved. I mean, Cruel Prince took the world by storm, but I actually really liked the way that Lexi Ryan crafted this fairy world, and it was really, really interesting. There's also all the characters in this story were super captivating, and I liked them all. I definitely have had a favorite. I'll say that. I'm not sure how book 2 is gonna go, but I always fall for the wrong ship. But this time the book sort of swapped on me, and I didn't expect that kind of going in. But I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I was so happy that I picked it up. Definitely excited for book 2 whenever it comes out. But I liked this and gave it 4.75 stars. There was some pacing issues throughout the whole book that I think could have made this book a little bit shorter. But other than that, I liked it, and I'm excited for book 2 whenever it comes out. Then the last book that I finished reading, actually this morning, was Superman Dawnbreaker from the DC Icon series by Matt De La Pina. I just finished this book literally as on the train ride home. This is also one of the books from my TBR game, which I was frantically trying to finish, which I did. So I do not have to do a punishment roll. Yay! But this is the last core 4 of the DC Icon books. And this is probably my favorite. I think Superman is probably the DC hero that I like the most, other than the Flash. But I really liked how Matt De La Pina sort of built this story. But you basically follow Clark as he's sort of coming into his own powers, realizing that he's a Kryptonian, and it follows him and Lana and a bunch of other side characters. You do see Lex as he's trying to figure that out. He's set in a small but it's set in a small town. And the one thing I really appreciate about this book is Matt De La Pina is a Latino, and I liked how that was kind of incorporated into the conflict. So the problem is that there is a stop and frisk law that's basically going to be instituted on the books, and it's being targeted against Latino Americans, and there's also a lot of Latino Americans are going missing in this small town. So Clark, as he's sort of trying to deal with these powers, is sort of trying to uncover what is happening to these characters. There's a romance in here that I really did like, and that was adorable. It was really, really fun. I think that it was a nice origin story for me as someone who's not well versed in comics to sort of follow, and I really liked it. So at this point I only have to read one more, but the core 4 of this series that I originally was reading is done. There's still a Black Canary one, which I haven't read, but I really did like this book. I would probably give it 3.75 stars. I sort of said this in my reading vlog, which will be out after this. video goes up, that it sort of felt like I was watching like a CW show, which is exactly what I wanted. So yeah, it was super fun, and I'm happy that I picked this one up. But yeah, those are all the books that I finished reading in the second half of January. I will be back for my February TBR tomorrow, and we will chat about everything planned for the month of February. Let me know in the comments what was your favorite book that you read this month. For me, in this wrap up, I would say it was probably When You Get a Chance by Emma Lord, and probably Jade City and the Unmap Chronicles. Those are probably my three favorite, and Holo Vows. I had a lot of very, very good reads this month, so it's really, really hard to choose a favorite, but those are the ones that stood out to me. Definitely my favorite contemporary would probably be When You Get a Chance, and my favorite fantasy would probably be Forgery of Roses or League of Liars or Jade City. So yeah, but I'll talk to you guys tomorrow for my next video, and I hope you guys are staying safe and being well. Bye, friends.